Welcome to the Murali End. I'm Dominic Machado, and today I'm joined by Estelle Vasudevan from Colombo, Sri Lanka. Mark is off in Australia enjoying the first day of the Boxing Day test. So if you see him on the screen dancing around, keep an eye out for him. Post to our messages. Nick is enjoying a holiday in Jamaica, but we're here because there's important Sri Lankan cricketing news. If you're listening, give us a like, a comment, subscribe on whatever platform you're following us on. So two big things are going on. The first big thing, and it's kind of a strange thing to talk about because there's no real result that our team did in order to get this, but the Sri Lankan women's team has automatically qualified for the 2025 ODI World Cup to be held in India. And this is a really sort of big accomplishment because we've had to qualify for the last couple World Cups due to some unfortunate scheduling situations, but we've played through a whole cycle. We are one of the 5 teams who've earned automatic qualification with a 6th team to be added on later. Estelle, tell us, what does it mean to the squad to qualify automatically for this 2025 Women's World Cup?
Yeah, I'm sure it's a huge relief for a lot of the players in that squad because, as you mentioned, Sri Lanka hasn't been able to qualify automatically over the last couple of editions, right? And particularly because last time it was such a heartbreaking result for Sri Lanka in
Yeah.
2022. Just to refresh you guys' memories, like Sri Lanka made it to the qualifiers where they were likely to make it through. I think they were one of the front runners to make it through. But unfortunately, because of COVID, the entire qualifier tournament had to be abandoned because uh, the whole heap of players got infected with COVID. So
Yeah.
they had to cancel the tournament altogether. And because Bangladesh and the West Indies, if I'm not mistaken, had
Mhm.
finished above Sri Lanka in the Women's Championship, they ended up making it to the World Cup. I know Chamari was very upset about it because Sri Lanka was just kind of returning from that COVID hiatus, right? And they were getting into their groove and they had to miss out. Particularly they were disappointed because Bangladesh went ahead of them, and has generally been a team that Sri Lanka has got the better of, right? So it's I think it's a really good achievement for the team, particularly also because only 5 automatic qualifier spots, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that, India makes it through as hosts. So a total of 6, but realistically, only 5 of them go through. And
Yeah.
if you look at the order of things in the women's game, you've got England, Australia, India as the top 3 teams. And then you have South Africa, New Zealand kind of battling for that
Mhm.
4th or 5th spot. So for Sri Lanka to actually go past New Zealand and make it to that 5th spot. Remember, New Zealand's done with their schedule as well.
Mhm.
So they do finish below Sri Lanka in the table um, and have not guaranteed their spot. So that's a massive achievement, I think, to
Yeah.
go past a team that historically has had the better of Sri Lanka.
Yeah, and defending, World Cup champions as well,
Mm.
right? Or sorry, T20 World Cup champions. So, and I think one thing that we should highlight is that it did not start well for Sri Lanka. So they um, lost a series against Pakistan 2-1. They got whitewashed by India 3-0, and then they were playing Bangladesh in the beginning of 2023, and the first 2 matches were no results.
Mm.
And I'm sure the women were looking at those 2 matches and thinking, okay, if we get wins here, that'll put us in good
Yeah.
position. But they only they lose points because of that. And then there's this big series. And Estelle, I know you covered this very closely, so I'll let you talk about between Sri Lanka and New Zealand in early 2023. And that, to me, it seems like that really changed the momentum of the cycle for them.
Yeah, that's ultimately proved to be the difference between Sri Lanka making it through as the 5th team and
Mhm.
still having their fate in the hands of West Indies and Bangladesh, right? Because New Zealand was the team you would have like. I remember when Sri Lanka played India. I think it was the latter part of 2022.
Mhm.
I did a Twitter space with 2 Indian journalists, right, and with Anisha Ghosh and Ananya Upendra, and Anisha asked me at the end, like, make your predictions. Will Sri Lanka make it through, or will they have to play
Mm,
the qualifiers again? I mean, I jokingly said Sri Lanka will make it through because the order of things suggests that, like I mentioned, right? You've got five teams who have historically been the top five teams
yeah.
in the world and have been relatively consistent in every tournament that has been played, right? And when it
Hmm.
comes to this kind of qualifying format, you have to be consistently good to make it through. You can't,
Yeah.
like, it's not like a one-off series, right? That you win and come up to the World Cup. So the New Zealand series, what I think that's the big decider. If New Zealand had won one game there, they would have been the team that went through. So look, understanding what a huge win, you have to look at the fact that Sri Lanka had never beaten them before in any format,
Yep.
and then you had them win a series against them, and in incredible fashion in goal. Think Chamari played maybe two of her best
Yeah.
ever knocks in that series. Sri Lanka lost the second game where I think Amelia Kerr and Sophie Devine got hundreds. But
Yeah.
in the first and third game, the way Chamari batted, it was, I think that was kind of the start of things, right? Where things picked
Yeah.
up for Sri Lanka.
And I think you can't really say enough. They had to chase 171, and Chamri gets 108 not out in 27 overs. And then, okay, that's a great accomplishment. Now you have to chase 196 in 27 overs, and she scores 140 not out. Right, 108 off of 83, 140 off of 80. I think that those are once in a lifetime
Mm.
innings. Those are, I mean, and actually, somehow Chamri has managed to play multiple of these over the course of the span. But and just to kind of give people an idea of how good she's been, the stats are just mind-boggling. She scored 1,088 runs in 23 matches. She's averaged 57. She's striking at 105. I think Nat Silverbrunt is the only other person who's striking above. Oh no, and Sutherland from Australia. She's hit 400s, okay, and she's hit 36s. No other women's player has hit more than 14 sixes in that span. She has been out of this world good. I think we should step back and appreciate that this
Yeah.
is not just like, oh, she's been really good. This is like all-time great level performance, and those wins that she willed the team to against New Zealand and then against South Africa, right, hauling down a score of more than
Yeah.
300 by scoring 195 not out, right, three not out 100s in chases that seemed nearly impossible. You can't say enough about how good she was.
Yeah. I like what you said about the once in a lifetime thing, right? Because it feels like she's played at least three once in a
Yeah.
lifetime ODI knocks in the last 2 years. She's been, I mean, there's at some point people are going to get tired of how much praise we heap on Chamari, but just looking at the context in which she
Yeah.
scores runs and how she's basically the women's team's batting has come along in the last year. In
Mhm.
2024 they've been pretty good, right? But before that it was basically her carrying them, and as you mentioned, those two New Zealand games, right?
Yeah.
She got a duck in the second game. Sri Lanka lost, and then the 200s came in winning causes, and like you said, unbeaten, right? So she sees
Yeah.
them through to the end. Phenomenal. Again, to remind you that Sri Lanka had 2 years without international cricket or club cricket. 2020 to 2022, no international cricket, no club cricket. And then they come out and she plays like that. It's just, I think we will only appreciate how great a player she is once she's done with things, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not something you look at. And I know a lot of people during the World Cup, the most recently concluded T20 World Cup, were looking at, are very quick to criticize, saying, she doesn't perform when it's important. But every position Sri Lanka have got into, whether it's World Cups or
Mhm.
series wins, it's on the back of something she's done.
Yeah, and the back of not just, oh, she's good, absolute brilliance. And
Mm.
and it's hard. It's very hard on a player to say, and we talked about this. when we were talking about the Asia Cup, right? Like she is so stressed. She was so stressed out in the final when she got out because she puts all that pressure on her back. All the other, or not all of the other, but many of the other great women's players have
Yeah,
fallback options, right?
yeah.
Someone else that can do the job, right? Susie Bates has Sophie Devine, right? You know, we know all the Indian batters who are brilliant. We
Mm,
know all the Australian batters who are brilliant. South Africa, you know, you have Marizanne Kapp and you have other batters who are capable of holding up the, you know, you have Nadine de Klerk and people like that who are capable of holding up the batting. And Chamari has just been so good for so long,
mm,
and I think she deserves to not have the extra pressure of I need to will my side over the line in another qualifier. And you know, I think, and when I was thinking about, you know, the 2024 World Cup, which was disappointing, they
mm.
just played so much cricket. Part of me thinks that it might have just been exhausting to play that many
Yeah.
series. And so having some rest time before the emotional high of a World Cup, I think will be really important. Excuse me.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Dom. I think also it probably didn't help that they were coming in after Asia Cup win. I
Yeah.
just, that we've seen that with the men's team as well, right?
Hmm.
It's very difficult to come to terms with that kind of high. Because it does feel it is something Sri Lanka have never achieved before,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they deserve to celebrate that and be applauded and be praised for that. But then to get your mindset for what you want to do at a World Cup is completely different. And
Right.
I think we've discussed this in prior episodes as well about the pressure of then suddenly being not a team that the world is expecting to finish last, right?
Yeah.
You're going in with people actually talking about you potentially threatening to get into the semi-final, and that adds a different kind of pressure as well. And none of those girls, none of them would have faced that before, because even in the Asia Cup that they won, they were not expected to win at all, right? I think
Yep.
99% of people would have just thought prior to the final that it's India's game, right?
Yep.
So all of that comes together. I do think they'll want to have at least a couple of, they will be playing New Zealand in January, if I'm not mistaken. But beyond that, maybe a couple of series scheduled outside of
Yeah.
the women's championship so that they have some time to kind of, because if you look at that team, the 11 is no longer kind of, you kind of have some question marks over some
Yeah.
players, right? So
Yeah.
that'll be something they'll need to work out before they go to India. And we don't know what type of pitches they will get,
Hmm.
what type of conditions. So that'll be interesting to see. And also, a spanner into the works, if Pakistan qualify,
Mm.
then that means there will be a
Yeah.
neutral venue for that fixture, which Sri Lanka will have to travel to, right?
Yeah.
So um I I- I think they will want a couple of games or a couple of series before they head out to India, because
Yeah.
they'll just need to get their bearing and get that, like, first 11 sorted out.
Mm. So Estelle, my positive thought on that is the chances that India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka are in the same group, I'm hoping are fairly low. Oh, but you never know, right? Because
I
I
I
guess
think
it's only.
I think everyone plays everyone.
Oh, is it? It's
uh
a because it's only 8 teams. So is it? It's
yeah,
a full round. It's a
let
full
me
round robin. It's not
see,
too.
2025.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. It's a full round robin, and
Yeah,
then the
so
top four
that will
teams.
definitely happen.
Yeah.
Where like if Pakistan make it through, Pakistan are in the qualifiers.
Qualifiers. Yeah.
Yeah, so it will most likely happen that Sri Lanka will have to, or yeah, Sri Lanka and the other teams that are playing them will have to travel
Yeah.
um,
To
to a
UAE or
neutral venue, which we
yeah,
don't know what the neutral venue is.
what it'll be this
Which,
time. Yeah.
as someone who is hoping to cover it as a journalist, is a problem.
Mm, mm,
Because going to have to sort, I mean, unless it's in Sri Lanka, you're going to have to sort
yeah.
visas and stuff like that also ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the other thing I wanted to ask, and you were just kind of alluding to this, is there are some pieces in the 11 that need some work. And I think for me, one of the things that I sort of noticed watching them play T20 versus ODI cricket is that in ODI cricket, they're more Chamari dependent, I think,
Mm,
now than they are in T20 cricket. It's a different mentality. I think also the bowling it's hard to find people who are going to bowl 10 overs
mm,
and be penetrative
yeah.
throughout, right? And take wickets. And I think that has been a problem, is that sometimes they can give up big scores to these
Mm,
sides because they lack the sort
yeah.
of depth, right? Kavisha Dilhari was the top wicket taker for the Sri Lankan side in the ODIs they played, and then it was Oshadi Ranasinghe, and then you have to go down to Chamari Atapattu as the sort of next highest wicket taker. Inoko Ronawira had been really good in 2023, but then kind of took a step back in 2024. So to me, the big question is, can some of the batters carry over their significant improvements that they made over the past couple of years? And then who is going to take the wickets? And do
Mm.
you have any thoughts or any inklings about what's going to happen or things that you expect to unfold?
Yeah, the batting is going to be interesting to me because I think the bowling will more or less stay the same as it's been over the last couple of years, where you've had like Inoshi Fernando come in and do well in the T20 scene and play a couple of
Yeah,
ODIs. Kavisha, Sri Lanka's strike bowler, and then you kind of get the idea that Sri Lanka has moved past Oshadi Ranasinghe and Inoka Ranavira now.
yeah,
So you've got the Sugantika Kumaris, Udeshika, the evergreen Udeshika
yeah.
Prabodhini, who continue to play. Achini Kulasuri is another one. So I think it's beyond this World Cup that there will be major changes to the
Mm,
bowling, where we might see, one or two retirements. But the batting will be interesting because, I mean, we're talking off air about, like, the third highest run getter in during this cycle is Nilakshi De Silva, right?
yeah.
And Nilakshi hasn't real
Second highest actually. No, no,
is
third
it
highest, third
third?
highest, third
Yeah, after Harshita. So
highest.
Nilakshi hasn't really had a great 2024. She's been very much out of form and hasn't really had a lot of opportunities as well, because you've seen
Yeah.
that top four kind of really kick on. So that is one position I think you could think of. Anushka Sanjeevani has shown glimpses of what she
Mm,
can do, but we haven't really seen that consistency. I think in T20 cricket, the thing is Sri Lanka can always opt for the six batters,
yeah,
and kind of have the bits and pieces all rounder type player at 7 and 8.
yeah,
But in ODI cricket, like you said, it's a longer game, right? So you have to be
yeah,
sustained, like the performances have to be sustained,
yeah,
which is where they kind of struggle. I think you can take a little bit of hope from the fact that both Harshita and Vishmi have got hundreds
yeah,
in their most recent ODI outings. So that that growth is happening, but I
yeah.
think the middle order will be a
Mm,
kind of a question mark, because if there's anything we learned from this T20 World Cup that was just concluded, is that how important form is,
yeah,
particularly when when you basically go into a tournament where your 11 is guaranteed and your
mm,
bench is not quite at that level where you want, particularly with the batting, right? Sri Lanka goes into tournaments with seven batters, so
yeah,
they know they don't have an option if someone's not
yeah,
playing well. So that will be something I'm sure the coaches will also work on. I think they recently had a domestic tournament where Nilakshi got runs.
yeah,
um, so that'll be something they'll be focusing on. But look, we've spoken about the growth around
mm,
Chamari, but there's still no doubt in my mind that it's still very much dependent on Atapattu, right? Sri Lanka's success.
yeah.
It is
Do you think that?
less, but
Yeah,
it's still like, very large percentage of Sri Lanka's success is going to be decided by how well she bats.
and especially against those best teams in the world,
Mm,
right? I think that's the other part, is that sometimes you need a game changing performance against a side that's better than you, and Chamari is the one person who can do that.
mm,
The other players are capable, but to provide, that generational performance, it's still kind of on Chamri's shoulder. Do you think some of the younger bowlers might get a look in? Like Sachini Nasansala had played a few ODIs, especially against West Indies. I'm wondering if someone like Dumi Vihanga might get
mm.
a look, especially looking for an all rounder type, kind of lower down in the order, who can bat a bit and bowl a bit. especially because she provides some off spin
Yeah.
options. But there are plenty of off spinners in the side, and then the X factor obviously is always Sasha Nigimhani,
Mm,
right? Left arm wrist spin is just not something you face every day,
yeah.
and especially if these series early on in the year, right, they have no bearing
Yeah.
on sort of any outcomes. Maybe they'll try some younger
Mm.
bowlers. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm actually really interested to see why Devmi Vihanga hasn't kind of
Mm,
been brought in,
mhm.
because you know it's very easy to think it's the age, because like you've got Manudina Nakar also, who's been
Yeah,
performing well for the under 19s. Then you've got Devmi. I think Rashmi. I can't. No, not Rashmi. There's another medium pacer whose name I can't remember right now, who was brought into a squad but never played.
yeah,
Shashini Gimhani, the 15-year-old, played. So like you can't
yeah,
really say it's down to age and they don't want to put too much
yeah,
pressure on the youngsters. So I'm surprised that actually Devmi Vihanga didn't really get a look in after that, the previous under 19 World Cup.
yeah,
I'm not sure she's close to the national team just yet.
yeah.
Um, I do think that the likes of Kavya Kavindi and
Mm,
Shashini
mhm.
Gimhani, Sachini Nisansala, as you mentioned, could be the players who they kind of rotate around
Yeah,
because they've been in and around the squads.
yeah,
I think there might be changes after that, because as I said before, like Sri Lanka do have a few players who might
yeah,
look to move on. I mean I don't know. I thought this happened with Udeshika in 2020, but it's
yeah.
2025,
Right.
almost 2025, and she's still playing.
Yeah,
But like given the age of some of the players, you would think that there might be a bit of changing of guard after this World Cup. But for
yeah,
now, I don't really see. Look, I could be wrong. They could bring in some of those players. I haven't really seen any signs that they're considering some of those players. Just the ones
yeah.
who've already kind of been part of the setup.
Debuted, right? Like Sachinina Sansala, I think
Mm,
would make sense.
mm.
Yeah, and as you said, Kavya Kavindi, again, another person you might look into.
Yeah, because
I wouldn't be.
the thing I think that um, uh, that holds them in good stead. The three names I mentioned, Shashini Gimani, Sachini Nisansala, and Kavya Kavindis, all three of them kind of look like they can bat. Like I've seen them in the
Yes.
nets, and they
Yeah.
they look like they have like the basics to
Yeah.
someone who could be a good number 6, 7, 8 batter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that might be what's prompting, because we love to have those bowlers who can bowl a bit and bat a bit, right?
Yeah.
Like the
You
Milan
need it, right?
Ratnayakas.
Yeah. Exactly. You need it, especially in
Yeah.
that 50 over game, especially to drag it out.
Mm,
If the top order
yeah.
fails, yeah, you don't want to
So
be.
I think that might be one of the reasons that they've been kind of the ones in and
Yeah.
around the squad. I also think Rashmi De Silva, who is a leg spinner and
Mm,
has debuted for Sri Lanka. I think she debuted against India in this cycle. She's another one they might look at, because we don't have a leg spinner in the squad,
yeah.
and it's not something you see that often
Yeah.
in international cricket either, right? Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of Australia has a couple of good leg
Yeah.
spinners. India has Asha Shobana,
Yeah.
Amelia Kerr. I can't think
Yeah.
of too many other leg spinners who are kind of doing really
Yeah.
well. So that might be another player who they would want to give
Yeah.
a couple of outings to.
And I think, as you said, the pitches matter as well. I
Mm.
think that was something, the UAE was something different
Yep.
than what was expected, in terms of what the pitches would look like. So I think it'll be really interesting. And we'll obviously cover the New Zealand series and keep our eye on how things are developing. But I think, first of all, it's a great accomplishment to make that
Mm.
six, right? Because there's only 8 teams in the tournament, and
Yep.
this is something the ICC will want to correct sooner rather than later. Ireland is on the outside looking in, but that's a very good squad, right? That
Yep.
beat us twice, and has lots of very, very talented players, um, who can who are stars in the game. So it'll be very interesting to see how they shape up and what kind of preparations they take. And again, whether they kind of go with this is a last run for
Mm.
veterans, or hey, maybe it didn't work as well as we thought it would in the 2024 World Cup should we bring in some new blood. Speaking of that, let's talk about the men's series in New Zealand coming up. I believe the first game is 2 days from when we're recording on the
Yeah.
28th. And so the men are playing three T20s against New Zealand. They're going to be at the Bay Oval and then the Saxton Oval. And they play I would say, a more or less new look New Zealand side.
Mm.
And just to kind of go over the squad. So this is the T20 squad that Sri Lanka is bringing along. So Charatha Solanka is captaining. We've got Dinesh Chandimal, Asita Fernando, Avishka Fernando, Benura Fernando, Wanindu Hasaranga, Kamindu Mendes, Kusal Mendes, Patham Nisanka, Matisha Patarana, Kusal Mendes, Banaka Rajapaksa, Mahesh Tikshana, Nuan Tushara, Jeffrey Vandersay, and Chamindu Wickramasinghe. So any surprises for you, Estelle, in this T20 squad, or anything that you wanted to kind of point out as being particularly interesting?
I think it's more or less a settled kind of squad, right? We have seen a lot more consistency in picking squads. So the gripes we have against the squad also remain the same.
Yeah.
I think again the question is, what is Chandimal's role? In that he
Mm.
hasn't played, right? He hasn't played in 2 years, but he has been named in the last couple of squads.
Yep.
So what is his role? I'm sure that, I mean, there's massive value in having a player who has that much experience around younger players, but you would expect him to be out there, actually showing them how it's done rather than being
Mm.
on the bench if he's being selected. That's one for me. Also, Banuka Rajapaksha, what's his role? Didn't have a great run. Was it against? Yeah, it was New Zealand, right, at
New
home.
Zealand. Yeah.
Uh,
Batted at 6. Yeah.
yeah, didn't really have any performance to speak of in the Abu Dhabi T10. I don't think he played the Sri Lanka one. Did
He
he?
did. He did play the Sri Lanka one. He had one, I think 140 or 50, but it
Yeah,
wasn't anything to
yeah.
speak of.
So I'm curious as to see what kind of role they want to give him, because in the warm up he batted at 3, if I'm not mistaken. So
Mm-hmm.
um, whether they want to push him to 3, because that's kind of where he had the success early on, right, in his career, when Sri Lanka
Yeah.
toured Pakistan and he finished as player of the series. He
Yeah.
batted in that top 3 and he was able to get runs. So I'd be interested to see what happens there. Look, knowing his potential, every Sri Lankan
Yeah.
fan would want him to succeed, but it also then becomes a question as to, how long are you willing to kind of hold a
Mm-hmm.
spot for him? We've heard from selectors and the captain saying that, they've got a specific plan in place for him. They want him to achieve certain fitness targets, and they will be giving him opportunities on the long run and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
look, guys like Banuka, as we've mentioned so many times before, you don't get a lot of players in Sri Lanka who can do what he does.
Yeah.
That is one side of it. But also then you have to decide how many opportunities are you willing to give a player like that, because Sri Lanka are
Mm-hmm.
in this kind of phase where they don't have any major tournaments in
Yeah.
2025, right? So they've got 1 year, 1.5 years until the 2026 World Cup, um, where they kind of can, test things out a bit and make some changes with combinations and stuff like that and look at what people are capable of.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, they'll be wanting to kind of stabilize things, right? Because, like, if you look at the top order, seeing how someone like Pathum Nisanka has grown, is
Yeah.
that persistence with him and giving him that opportunity and giving him that confidence that, look, we have
Mm-hmm.
faith in you, has helped him grow into the player he is now. So
Absolutely.
you would also want to give that kind of opportunity to players, so that they can grow into their roles and understand what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my thing with Banuka. How long are you going to persist with
Yeah.
him? Is it like a no matter what he's going to play until 2026, or what the kind of conversation there is inside as well?
Yeah. And I think so two things that are interesting to me, right, is that it's not performance based,
Mm,
and they're two guys, right? We you said quite rightly, but they don't make players like Blanca and Sri Lanka.
mm,
They're not a dime a dozen, but two guys who do have power, who played well in this recent T10 were Dawson Shanaka, who has been in good form like the last few months and was player of the entire series for that T10 tournament, and Chamaka Karunaratne,
Mm,
who again had very good tournament, hit a lot of sixes, and you think, right? So one, they're both seam bowling all rounders, and that's a valuable asset to have going to New Zealand. And also they're right-handers, because right now, if we look at the Sri Lankan lineup, you got Kusal and you've got Potham at the top, right? And then you have Kamindu, you have KJP, you have Charith, you have Bonica,
Monica.
and you have Chamindu if he
Mm,
plays, right? Which I'd imagine he is. Five left-handers in a row, and that's just like a from a tactical point of view, like you're kind of giving up a lot, and they don't
mm,
seem to be intent on using one Indu as a floater to break that up, right? Because I just think that that's a bad premise, given how much we know matchups influence
mm,
T20 cricket, right? Like, why not make them do something different? So that's another thing that I kind of have in the back of my head is we have these people who performed, can provide, something else, right? They don't have to bowl a lot, but they can provide something else in the side. They're good fielders, both of those
mm,
guys. And so why Bonica? Like, what is Bonica's specific skill set that he provides that's better than those
mm,
guys? And it's not performance based, so we have to think about that. And then two other kind of like non-inclusions that were surprising to me is Duneth Walalage, right, who
mm.
just made his debut, and because Vandersay's in the squad, okay, he's been good, but for me, as someone who's not going to play, right, if Wanindu is playing,
Mm,
Wella's the guy you want on the bench, right? Who can come in and he can do so many things, right? He can
mm,
bowl, he can bat. You need an extra fielder. He's the guy you want out there, right? 36-year-old Jeffrey Vandersay is not, we love him, but that's not
mm,
his role. And we'll talk about this later, but the with the bowlers, Asita and Benora have been given another sort of Asita we've been seeing has been included in every single squad, and we've got four fast bowlers in the IPL, none of whom are or none of whom are or sorry, only two of whom are in the squad.
mm,
Not none of whom, but Ishan Malinga and Dushmantha Chamira, who I hear is injured, but they're not in the squad, right?
mm.
It's kind of a weird thing for SLC to say, like, oh, well, we know better than these IPL teams who've been doing copious research on all the bowlers in the world. And I get Benora does add something with his tall left arm angle, right? But you have Dilshan Madushanka. So it makes me wonder what is the purpose behind like Asita and Benora in the squad, and we'll talk about Eshan Malinga when we get to the ODI series in a couple of days. But it would have been a no brainer. It seemed like a no brainer to me to say, why don't we include him? You got someone who
Yeah.
can bowl up front and bowl at the death, right? So talented, and he's shown it. Why not bring him into the T20 squad?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this as well, right? Off air about how maybe they want to kind of ease Malinga into international cricket. But
Yeah,
this is an kind of inconsequential T20 series, right? At the end of the
yeah,
day. So I think there was an opportunity to include them. I'm really curious to know what the kind of the reason for the backing of Asith Fernando is. I mean, look, he gives you 200%, right? That if
yeah,
there's no doubt that he gives you his all, but he has not kind of been in the ODI or limited overs plans over the last until like the last 6 months or so.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, unless there's been an injury, he's not been in the plans, right? So I'm interested actually to know why things changed. He is a skillful bowler.
yeah,
Um, I think he's not a bad option. It's just like as you mentioned, having so many white ball bowlers kind of come up through the ranks, right?
yeah,
Dushmantha Chamira, as you mentioned, we are hearing he's injured. Dilshan Madhushankar, we don't really know where
yeah,
he is with his kind of recovery. Another one is Lahiru Kumara, who's been included in the ODI squad. Maybe
yeah.
T20 was the other option. So I think I guess it would be interesting to hear the thoughts of the selectors as to
Mhm.
what the what is it about Asita Fernando that you see him wanting to, you
Yeah.
want to have him in every squad. I wonder how many of those will play, because
Right.
you would expect Tushara and Patirana to play, right? So,
Right.
and then probably Chamindu Vikramasinghe plays as your all
Third,
rounder.
yeah, third
Yeah,
seamer all rounder. Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, they have to play Dikshana and
yeah,
Hasaranga, right? Like, there's no way around that.
yeah.
So unless, I mean, there's a possibility that they play three seamers and set Chamindu, but I don't think that would be a good
I
idea
mean
either.
that lineup it covers the power play, right? Because you've
Yeah,
got Tushara and
Dikshana.
Mahish who can bowl the power play. It does kind of leave you questioning who are your death over options, because obviously Patirana will bowl at least 2 overs
Yeah,
there. Uh, Tikshana probably one.
yeah,
And then you've got to get 1 over or 2 overs out of maybe Chamindu
yeah,
or Vanindu. So I
yeah.
would expect, maybe is there another spot if for them to bring in Bino Fernando and play the 5 bowlers with
Yeah, I
Vanindu?
think they would just have to drop Chamindu basically. They would
Mm,
have to drop Chamindu with Kramasinghe and bat one Indu
mm,
at seven. I
mm,
think would be the option there. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Also, one of the things we've discussed a lot is the pitches, to see both how
yeah.
the bowlers and the batters go on pitches that are going to be batting friendly.
Mm,
I think the bowlers have the skill, obviously, right? They've bowled all over the world to handle that, but it is a change in mentality for, like, how do you approach
yeah.
these matches, right? And even Charth as a captain is going to have to handle his bowling a little bit differently,
Mm,
because he can't just say, okay, I'm going to bring myself on for 3 overs now, to bowl at their left-handers, because he'll get smashed out of the park, or maybe he will, and it'll go fine. But I think the strategy will be interesting. It'll be interesting how the batters adjust to it. I think they'll be capable of adjusting. I think the top, obviously, I have a lot of faith in Pathum and Kusal as the openers, but I think how do you proceed once those two get out, if they've given
mm.
you a good start, is going to be the other question.
Yeah, this is the kind of tour that it it'll show us a lot about Sri Lankan team, won't it? I mean, I know it doesn't really have any bearing on anything, apart from the fact that there's been so much criticism about the pitches in Sri Lanka, and
Yeah,
how Sri Lanka have dominated in this in Sri Lanka, what a lot of people are calling paddy fields, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh, so this will be like a test for the team, and also for us to understand what the mentality is like. I mean, we've discussed this at length, and I know our opinions of it also have kind of changed and
hmm,
evolved over the last year about you know confidence is important, right? And Sri Lanka is a team that thrives on confidence. If you look at most of those players,
yeah,
when they are in a good space, they can be world beaters,
yeah,
right? So confidence is definitely important, but how far do you go with that in terms of providing conditions like we do in Sri Lanka?
right,
And how is it going to hold you up, or how are the players going to hold up when they travel to conditions like what we will likely see in New Zealand, where
yeah,
historically been high scoring, right? Smaller grounds,
yeah,
and easier to clear the boundary and hit sixes. So that'll be the interesting thing. It could be a real kind of one of Sanat's big victories if
yeah,
Sri Lanka come through with a successful tour in both the ODIs and T20s, because that'll prove that the work is done at home over the last year, and those series wins against India,
yeah,
and some other teams actually meant something. Or it
yeah,
could lead to even more criticism about preparing conditions like we do in Sri
yeah,
Lanka, and then struggling when we go abroad. But I think, given the team Sri Lanka are going with, and the batters batting in
yeah,
particular, there's no reason that they should struggle. I
yep.
think, if at all, wicket taking might be tougher, but I think the
That's,
batting
yeah. Someone like One
should
Indu
hold up.
is
Yeah,
someone. Yeah, he's the person who I would say probably has the biggest swing from going from Sri Lanka
mm,
to other conditions. I think Tikshana can handle it, and obviously our pace bowlers will be happy to be bowled
yeah,
in, be given their full quota of overs. And I think the other question is that whoever's the fifth bowler, right? Can they be productive
Yeah, because
on a pitch to bat?
also this limits Sri Lanka's like part-time options, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because there's no Dasun, as you mentioned, like
yeah,
who was pretty much a mainstay in that 11 a year
yeah,
ago. So when you play in conditions like this, again, it kind of limits your options because you're
yeah,
unlikely to get too many overs out of an Asalanka, right?
yeah.
Or
Or
even a
Kamindu,
Kamindu for that matter. So,
which kind of
uh,
makes it strange that Wella's not in the side, because he's someone
mm.
I would say, like, okay, maybe he's not the world's best left arm spin bowler, but you trust him to bowl in those conditions, you
But the
know?
thing is, Dom, with Vela, the way I see it is that he's not making it into that 11 as a middle order bat, right?
Yeah,
So then you're going to have to play him instead of one of the quicks,
yeah, and it's
because
not going to
obviously,
happen.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
not going to happen. So I think I don't I don't really have a problem with them leaving him behind for this series,
yeah,
uh, because of that reason. Because he's not really. I mean, he could have been in the squad, but like
Mhm.
I don't really see him making it into the 11 because
That's
of
true.
his spin bowling.
Unless he were to bat at like
Mm,
3 or something, which I
yeah.
don't think they're going to do.
Mm.
So, well, I think that's pretty much all we have to say about these two pretty exciting things coming up. More content is coming in the next few days. Not only will this preview be out, but we've got some more end of the year content on top individual performances and our award show. Keep an eye out for that. Give us your comments, give us your feedback. There's going to be some fan participation opportunities as well. All right, guys, we've been the Murali End. Thank you. Bye.